SGC here, and we're back for our first impression. Made in Abyss, Season 1, Episode 1. It's a new anime, and lo and behold, I mean, there's a lot of anime coming in and out every season now, so for Kotaku to have one whole article dedicated to this anime, I for sure was going to check it out. So this series is created by Akihito Tsukushi, and it's about a young girl who finds and befriends a humanoid robot and descends with him into the abyss in search of her mother. So that's the whole scope of the series. It's the whole searching for parents thing, seen that, done that type of thing. But definitely it stands out here. First off, this was based off a webcomic. So it's sort of like One Punch Man versus a already published manga that's been out for a while. So that's definitely refreshing. And there's only been 5 volumes, so it definitely has a lot of freshness to it. And not boiled down as to, oh, let's make this series and try to contain every 30 volumes thing that's been out so far. The studio in charge of this is Kinema Citrus, who back in 2014 did Barakamon, and I love that series, so definitely checking it out simply for the studio being the same. So, first episode, how did it go? First off, it looks beautiful. All the landscape shots, all the colors, the monster designs, and even just the architecture. The character design is also different, and definitely a big plus is that this is a fantasy world without the whole VR, augmented, whatever thing. I am so sick and done with that. So definitely this fantasy world being an actual fantasy world is a big plus. And granted, the kids are rather young, so there's that sort of like change of perspective that you have to, I don't know, just be more acceptable of kids being kids type of thing. But definitely as the first episode, we set up a few characters. We have our main character, Riko, who we find out lost her parents, and they're all orphans. And definitely the director is kind of crazy, and then leader is pretty interesting to see whose side is he really on. And then we got Robot Boy, who also doesn't know what's going on. So that's a really intriguing sort of premise in terms of no one knows what's going on, so it's more about they actually have to explain everything to each other, and it totally makes sense. Like, exposition is fine, only if it's contextualized. I mean, there are times where Riko's just like complaining about like, oh, how am I gonna do this? And that's like real life. Or how the director sort of explains sort of more about the history, about the world, while scolding the kids about hiding relics around, or leader doing the same thing about you can't go down to 400 meters because of this and that. You know this. A lot of the things are explained naturalistically, and I loved how Riko was explaining to Nat in the beginning of the episode where she's just like, oh, we gotta do this, and he's like, I know that, like, come on. And it's just great that has like an organic way of just explaining things for audiences that at least still feel natural in terms of the context of the story. And that's a hard thing to do in terms of Japanese anime, because there's a lot of explaining to do, world building, and it tends to fall on the side of where it's just exposition for the sake of exposition, and it doesn't feel like characters are actually talking to each other. As the first episode, the pacing is done really well. First off, we meet the main 2 characters. I'm assuming, I don't know how main Nat's gonna be, but Robot Boy is gonna be up there. But Riko, it's like we get to know her personality, how she like thinks, and she like saves her friend, and then it progresses to the Robot Boy, and there's just the curiosity and just the drive to do more and want to excel, and then meeting the orphans and the orphanages and like the adults, and then now with Robot Boy being like, whoa, Robot Boy, you're real here. What's going on? Love the pacing of it's like these chunkings of this progression of just the storytelling as it expands on its scope. So definitely the world is big, and especially how it ends with a narrator explaining the 14,000 year history, and it's just intriguing, and definitely loved it how it leaves you at the end where you're like, okay, I gotta come back and check out episode 2, which I totally am gonna do. Seriously though, people always tell me like, you gotta give series 3 episode tries, and I'm like, no, I feel like if you have a solid writing, direction, and everything all that, you should pull people in by episode 1. You don't need freaking 3 episodes. If you can't do it in 1, it's like, why did you bother with the 3? That's my take on it. But, you know, there's tons of people doing the whole 3 thing, but oh well. Anyway, I am sold on this first episode of Made in Abyss, and I'm definitely going to come back and finish the rest of the series, and definitely going to check out, hopefully find it online somehow, and finish the manga, or get caught up anyways. Because definitely I feel like this is going to be a long-term thing. Like, One Punch Man has season 2. Hopefully this will get season 2 as well, because it's just different and fresh. Character designs, monster designs, Oh yeah, sorry. One last thing. Soundtrack is awesome. The opening sequence was just, that song was great, and I loved how the opening sequence is not just a generic sort of like opener intro. Rather, it's just taking place while she finds Robot Boy and meets up with Nat. And granted, the ending is like your typical anime, but also good song, also good soundtrack, and this music and the scenery, amazing. Anyway, that's it for this first impression of Made in Abyss, Season 1, Episode 1. Later.